Rumors are swirling that Warriors center Kavon Looney could be on his way out. Should he go? Will he go? We'll answer that question now on Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Warriors. Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks so much for being here. I'm your host, Kylan Mills, a play-by-play broadcaster, host for a number of networks, NBC Sports Bay Area, the Big Ten Network, and much more. And I am joined today by a very special guest, ABC 7 sports anchor and reporter Chris Alvarez, and my good friend. So glad to have you here. Three big topics to cover today. Kavon Looney's future majorly in question as the Warriors look to overhaul this roster in the offseason. Who are you willing to put on the trade block and who must stay on the Dubs this offseason? A question I'm going to ask you. And then Draymond Green shared a big regret he has in his recent recording of his podcast. We'll dive into all of that. Chris, great to see you. How's it going? How's
Kylan, it's great to see you,
right?
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And I think you cut yourself short on all your accomplishments. So you could have gone maybe another minute or two and then introduce me, but we'll save that for later.
You're all good. You've got plenty of accomplishments of your own. Chris, if you haven't seen him, is always courtside whenever the Warriors have games airing on ABC. He's a big part of the post-game show. The ABC 7 does a great job of. Larry Beal hosts. Great people. And right off the bat, we're going to dive into Kavon Looney's future here with the Golden State Warriors. My take is let Kavon Looney move on. I think that the Warriors need to make major changes. And if that means cutting Kavon Looney, unfortunately, so be it. Love the guy, fan favorite, appreciate all he's done. What is your take on the future of Kavon Looney? Do you think the Warriors should let him go?
Yeah, and I started seeing some of these reports yesterday about Kavon Looney. And first off, before anything basketball, I've gotten to know him over the years, and you mentioned he is a great guy. The team loves Kavon Looney, but at a certain point, you've looked at teams when a dynasty comes towards its end, you have to reset it and try and make it. And everything's within the Steph window, right? Everybody talks about what can we do to get Steph another title or another chance at getting back in the playoffs. And as much as everyone loves Kavon Looney, you saw that the streak that he had, the consecutive game streak, it ended during this year. And that was when he was healthy. So you kind of saw a little bit of the writing on the wall, especially with the development of Trace Jackson Davis. So it's possible he leaves. I'm not the one making decisions, but I can see, Kylan, if we were the GMs, it would definitely be a consideration because you look at what the Warriors need to do with all the financial restructuring they have to try and do this offseason and leading into next year. And maybe Kavon Looney is an unfortunate casualty of that, but he's going to have plenty of interest around the league. He's a guy he said he's entering his 10th year. It's hard to believe that Kavon Looney is entering his 10th year already. A big that obviously can rebound with the best of anybody. He knows the game. He's developed in that sense, but then we'll talk about this later. He talked with Draymond Green on his podcast after the NBA Finals Game 2. The NBA has changed, and so the Warriors are going to need to adapt with that. And Kavon Looney talked about adapting his game, and we can get more into that. But short answer, Kavon might be on the block to be cut, and then he's going to be fine. He'll land somewhere else, and he's going to be a great fit with whoever that might be. And one natural fit to me seems to be the Kings with Mike Brown. He obviously has some connections there, so you might still be seeing a lot of Kavon Looney if you're a Warriors fan if he goes to Sacramento. And that's just a quick thought. There's no insight there as far as where Kavon might go, but he might be one of the first players that leaves or is cut, and then you got to see what the Warriors do as far as restructuring their roster because there's a lot to be played out with free agency coming up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton still at play. To give more context, Kavon Looney's numbers were majorly down this past year after what was a great 2021-22 campaign. The following year, his rebounding numbers were the best of his career. So just to give you the exacts, 4.5 points per game is what he averaged this past season. 5.7 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and those numbers were considerably down from the prior season. Averaged more than 9 boards per game in 2022-23, which is really impressive. The championship year averaged 6 points, just over 7 boards per game, 2 assists per game. So still really good. But for whatever reason, the minutes went down, the production went down this past season. I feel like he looked slower. And I, again, love Kavon Looney as a person, the utmost respect. I do think there's still room for traditional big in the NBA. I think that's a big question mark, is looking around the league, how many more bigs now you're looking for explosiveness, athleticism, having outside handles, and that's not Kavon Looney. I still think there is a place for a banger inside, but to me, when I look at Trayce Jackson-Davis, I see him having more potential than Kavon Looney at this point. He can score the basketball. Loon isn't a threat offensively, and I do think that's a big problem with the way the Warriors play. I would love to see him. And I know he said, and you touched on, he talked about it on Draymond Green's podcast. Kavon Looney said he would like to stay with the Warriors. I would like to see that. I just don't know that it's realistic based on how much retooling they have to do of this roster. With the numbers he put up last year, I think that he would be an easy casualty to make, in terms of if you do have to cut someone, not easy in terms of seeing him leave, but just if you're looking at the numbers, hey, this is someone that we're okay with letting go, especially now that we have Trayce Jackson-Davis and we feel like we can start to develop him to be more of that traditional big who can kind of bang inside, and he's more athletic. He's younger than Loon. I don't know about you, but I feel like Kavon Looney looks like the oldest 28-year-old in the world running out there. And I just feel like he made a little bit of a regression this year. Do you feel like his game dropped off at all in this last season?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is true with Kavon, and the way the league has gone with the bigs that need to do everything, the handles, the outside shooting. Look, Trayce is a lot younger. He's more explosive. He was that threat at the rim, the lob threat. Klay Thompson and him had a nice little John Stockton, Karl Malone thing. They were just really in sync with the lob game. Think about the blocks that Trayce made all season. So Kavon just doesn't have that in his game, at least right now. I haven't seen him since, what he can retool and what he may be able to do. But if you're talking about Trayce versus Kavon, the athleticism, obviously the price is different, the upside, the coaching that they're going to do with him is he's going to continue to get better. And I actually had a chance to talk with Trayce Jackson-Davis just last week. We played video games for one of our features that's going to air on after the game on ABC 7.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was fun. He crushed me in 2K. I won't give you the score. You're going to have to watch. I started off like on an 8-0 run, and it was all downhill from there because I'm trying to ask questions, and secretly, like, Trayce is fouling me. He's making substitutions. I'm like, what's happening? He's alley-ooping. But the point of the conversation was Trayce, he was actually bothered that he didn't make the all-rookie team. Like, he missed it by one vote. He said it's a motivation. He's going to play a little bit of summer league. He actually has a haircut. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. I just noticed it. But the Warriors, they have Steph Curry. I think they did a great job with their draft last year. They obviously get Brandon Pajemski and Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's found 2 contributors, young guys that you can hopefully bring into your next core. And Kylan, you were here for the 2 timeline thing with when it was Jordan Poole, when it was James Wiseman, Moody and Kuminga were part of that conversation too. But during that championship year, Jordan Poole, we all know what happened to him, but he was that secondary explosive scorer that could get you 20. And then with relation to Kavon, like, you can't have 2 non-shooters on the floor. Draymond will get you the points at times, but essentially you have 3 guys that maybe can score, and then the 2. And then in this NBA, you just can't have that. You can't have anybody that can't put up points at a consistent enough rate. And so I think the Warriors ran into problems with that last year. And again, that's where Kavon, when Trayce kind of got his chance to shine, not that he's scoring 20 a game, but he's going to get you maybe 8 and 10 or 8 and 8 and have some blocks as well. So Kavon can fill up the stat sheet as far as rebounds go, but it's just not enough in today's NBA. You're going to need to add more scoring around Steph, who you're trying to limit his minutes so he can be fresh in the postseason. The Warriors really relied on Steph, especially towards the end of the year, just to try and get to where they were, which is 10, and it just didn't work. So, Looney is a great player and a great fit, but he needs to expand his offensive game. And I don't know what he's done in the months since the season ended, but right now, if we're just talking about the body of work we've seen, and you talked about his age also looking like an older 28-year-old. He had those 2 hip surgeries right off the bat. Yeah. So maybe his body in basketball sense is just a little older than his actual normal age.
Yeah. As someone who's had hip surgery, I had a soccer injury. I can tell you it vastly changes just the way that you're able to accelerate, turn, move. Like, It does have a huge impact. And he had that first surgery pretty young. If you remember, he dropped quite a bit in the NBA draft. Was it 2014 or 15? I'm like, he's now been here. He's on his 10th year. Is that 2014?
Might be 14.
Was it 14?
Or 15,
I can't remember, but he dropped down to 30th because he had that hip surgery like that day. And, that does play a huge role. You have two. I just, I do think that has to be taken into consideration, because I know doctors have told me, like, listen, your hips are older than the average person who's your age. Like, you're going to need a hip replacement much younger than people. And a lot of that's just how you're built structurally. It's not necessarily an injury that happens just one time. Just the way that you're built, sometimes it can be tougher on the joints. And, I think after undergoing a major surgery like that, anytime you have to consider what is the lifespan going to be of this athlete, how long can they realistically maintain playing at such a high level, and all of the rigors that go with it, and just how difficult it is on the body. So I think it's a very fair question to ask. Once again, we love Kavon Looney, but his future with the Warriors certainly should be in question, because they have to make major changes. It's just where they're at right now. It was originally reported by Tim Kawakami, want to mention, on The Athletic. He was the first one who kind of got this conversation going, because he said on the Plus Minus podcast a couple days ago that it is likely the Warriors will cut Kavon Looney. Cut him, not even look to trade him. They will cut him. He has $3 million guaranteed left on a 3-year, $25.2 million deal. So those are the numbers. They want to come in and try to bring down the number below the luxury tax. So that's always something with the big, some of these big salaries the Warriors are paying that they have to be cognizant of. And then want to touch on really quickly before we move on that he did speak on the Draymond Green show about this topic. And he basically said the ball isn't in my court. Kavon Looney said, I'm a player who I've been able to adapt. I know this wasn't my best year. I will try to continue to find ways to make it in this league. I would love to stay with the Warriors. I would love to retire with the Warriors, but that's not always realistic. He acknowledged he's been around the business long enough. But he basically said the ball's not in my court. I'm kind of just waiting to see what the Warriors are going to do. And it sounded like he's pretty uncertain as well in terms of what the future might hold. But of course, we love Kavon. I think he'll be a Warrior for life, right? I mean, the Golden State Warriors fan base has embraced him, and no matter what happens, he will continue to be revered for being a part of that championship or multiple championship runs.
Absolutely. And there was something about that championship run in the 2022 season, 21-22 season. And Loon was a big part. We on our shows, as we do expansive coverage of the Warriors and you get closer, we had a lot of, like, what they call in the TV business, like Kavon Looney, like breakouts. Like, you want to focus specifically on Loon, give him his credit. I've interviewed Looney numerous times on the floor after the game, and he's one of the absolute pros of this league. We wish him the best, and he will be a Warrior for life. And those echoes of Loon, like, if you're a Warriors fan, you will remember those moments of chase, especially when he had like that, 18-20 rebound game in one of the Western Conference Finals. He was huge, getting all those extra possessions. But as we mentioned again, if Kavon can adapt his game and get at least more of a scoring average or an outside shot, you think about someone that kind of has done in their career, like a Brook Lopez, who can shoot the three and step out. Yep. Obviously, they're different players, and I think Brook is a little taller and at least lankier looking. Maybe that's part of his game, but again, it might not be here with the Warriors.
Yeah, fair questions to ask, fair discussion. We're going to move on to talking about who else from the Warriors would you be willing to see move on? Who has to stay on this roster as the Warriors look to do a major retool? Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And this episode is also sponsored by eBay Motors. Let me get the overlay up here really quick. eBay Motors is a huge supporter of the Locked On Podcast Network, and they have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With the all parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So let's get into that discussion about, okay, so we're both on the same page. Like if Kavon Looney has to be, unfortunately, one of the sacrificial lambs of retooling this roster, that's the way that it goes. And we love him and we respect him, but the Warriors are going to have to make some tough decisions. When we go down the list of this roster, for you, Chris, who has to stay? Like who absolutely, even if you're looking at trading for a superstar, like the dream player, are you not willing to put up, in discussion on the trade block?
I think the only one really is Stephen Curry, right? This is Steph's team. This is Steph's franchise. He's helped build it to what it is today. Obviously, he's had help with, the big three overall. But right now, everything I think has to revolve around Steph. And then if you're to keep other guys, I'd like Jonathan Kuminga where he's at. But he is the one piece that I think probably has the most trade value. If you're trying to get the biggest return, I think he's probably that player that you look at and say, if there's anyone on this roster outside of Steph, obviously, and that's can't say it's not happening because you never know. Sports surprise you, but I would say that's not happening. If it's not anyone else in the roster, Kuminga is probably going to give you the most in return because you look at the production he had this year, the upside he has, where he could potentially be going. The question you have to ask yourself, at least with JK, is can he be Steph's number 2? And I think he showed flashes of that this year, but as a consistent 20-plus point scorer, I'm not sure it's there yet. I do like where he's growing. Draymond Green, obviously, with Steph, those guys have different quality. They have different skill sets, obviously. And Draymond we've seen what the Warriors are when Draymond's off the floor, how much of their record changes. Everything changes. I just think about what happened last year if Draymond wasn't suspended one of the times where the Warriors maybe would have been record-wise. I realistically believe with all those close games they were in, and they lost a good chunk of them, could they have been the 6th seed? The Dallas Mavericks are 5. They made the NBA Finals. I'm not saying the Warriors could have made the NBA Finals, but I'm saying is that those games that the Warriors were so close in and they lost the margin, there was plenty of them. They maybe aren't as bad as their record and their 10th place and out finish was last year. And then I think another target is Andrew Wiggins, but the problem with Andrew is the money and who wants to take that out, the inconsistent play. He obviously had a great NBA Finals run, and he was a huge part of why they won. And that was the kind of player that the Warriors were looking for. He signs the big deal, and ever since, he really hasn't been the same player with either the production or the off-the-court issues and how much, look, these guys are human, but something is affecting Andrew to either where he's not consistent on the floor or he's just not on the floor. And so I think if you're keeping anyone, it's Steph, obviously, and then you look at your options and say, what can we get potentially for player X, whether it's Kuminga, Wiggins, Draymond, I mean, anybody. Clay, what does Clay do? Do you sign and trade him? Does he just walk? I mean, there's so many questions with this roster. I think the only guys that for sure are going to be on the roster is going to be Steph and some of the young guys because of the production they had and where they're at contractually. So I'm going to say it's Steph. I'd like to keep Kuminga. I'd like to keep Draymond. And I think Andrew Wiggins probably is the one that the fans are also okay. And it's not a fan business, but it is in the sense of who you're going to bring into your building and how competitive can you be. So if it's one, it's Steph for me.
Okay.
That has to stay. Absolutely.
You can go, I was going to say, you can go beyond one. I mean, we can say that more than one player is protected in trade discussion. But I'm on the same page as you. I think Steph obviously is a given. I don't think they let Draymond, walk by any means or look to trade him. For me, Jonathan Kuminga is a piece that can't be moved, but I think it's such a tough situation because, to your point, he has the most value. And if they are looking to bring in like a superstar, which has been reported by multiple sources, like the Warriors are open to making a very, very big trade or a very, very big free agent signing. If it is a trade, then Jonathan Kuminga is immediately the piece to me that other teams would be looking at. So how do you find a package that's going to be attractive enough to bring in a superstar without including Jonathan Kuminga? I think that's going to be a challenge for the Warriors. Another player I would like to protect, and I'm curious to get your take on this, is actually Brandon Pajemski. I love him. I think that, maybe for like a big, big superstar, I would be willing to, put him into the discussion. But like, he's one that I think the Warriors should really try to keep. I love just the fire and the energy that he brings to the floor, Chris. The fact that in the month of February, he led the Warriors in rebounds. Granted, I'm pretty sure Draymond was injured for a chunk of that time. But leading the Warriors in rebounding for portions of the season, leading the Warriors in assists, I think he has room to improve defensively, but I think there are a lot of positives he translated to the NBA a lot faster than I thought he was going to. Reads the game well. I like his playmaking and passing ability. And I just think he's an exciting and fun player to watch. I could see him being a piece long-term for the Warriors. What do you take away from what you saw from him this season?
Not to mention he takes a lot of charges.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And forgot about that, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great quality. He's so unselfish with what he does on the floor. And I remember it was early in the season. I think it was actually the game Draymond and Rudy Gobert got in their thing in the in-season tournament. And that was Brandon's first like real chunk. He was kind of forced into the game because the Warriors, it was a panic. I don't know. It was a wild game, that game at Chase Center, and he hit like a third quarter buzzer beater off the glass and in. And like, you just saw some sort of spark. And Brandon obviously translated to having an all rookie year. He was a rising star. He, provided that spark. But I think there was a point in the year where Brandon did hit the rookie wall. Like he wasn't scoring. And so, again, we talked about with the Warriors, what were they missing most of the year was scoring. They needed more points. They needed more guys putting up consistent averages. And so he's got a decent shot from the lefties. He can shoot it a little bit. He's going to give you what amazes me is, as you mentioned, the rebounding, like he just has a nose for the ball. He's like a magnet to him. That for a young player is something you don't always see because they're trying to figure out a lot of different things. You know about the Warriors system and how hard it is for rookies to adapt. We saw some of the struggles with the guys that they've had in the past that have now moved on and did not work out, or it took a long time for them to try and figure it out. The Warriors don't have a lot of time in the Steph Curry window if you're trying to maximize still where Steph's at with his extended prime and the numbers he's putting up. So Brandon, I think, is a very good piece. But again, if you're trying to get that really secondary superstar, I would look at it and then you'd have to assess it, obviously. But Brandon, I agree, is a very good player and could be a long-term piece for this core, along with Jonathan Kuminga. Again, if you keep him, I think the biggest piece to try, and if you can move, is Andrew Wiggins. But again, we talked about what is his value because he's just the inconsistency is going to scare some teams away. So Brandon might be in talks. I do think likely, though, that we talked about Jonathan Kuminga is probably the player that if the biggest return in someone, because the Warriors don't have draft assets either. That's another problem. You're not OKC where you have a million picks and can throw that in to allure somebody to get another superstar. So I do like Brandon Podziemski. I think he's a rising star in this organization, hopefully for the Warriors and in what he provides, because it's not all about the points because he did so many of the things that don't show up on the box score. A lot of people look at the box score and say, oh, he played 30 minutes, scored 2 points. Well, he took how many charges? He was involved in providing extra possessions with a rebound here and there or getting a tip ball. So there's some things that Brandon does that don't end up on the box score that the casual fan or the fan that's looking at numbers only sees. So you might be right. Brandon is a piece that you want to keep around here just because if for anything else, it's the intensity he brings. He's a mini Draymond Green. Like he called him out as a rookie. Do you know how hard that is to do in training camp to call out Draymond? And Brandon had the guts or the confidence or whatever you want to call it to do it. So I think he has that dog in him. And so the Warriors need a little bit of that if Draymond's obviously not going to be here forever, because you look at any championship team, you need someone that is going to be the hard-nosed guy that's going to do some of the dirty work. And Brandon also can score. So that's a good pick for sure.
It's a tough situation the Warriors are in when you look at the two timeline situation that you alluded to earlier on, because, yes, you want to bring in a star. I don't think there's a question the Warriors need a second score behind Steph. No one stepped up and consistently was that this last season with the way you want to space the floor. Like, you need that. You need another shooter and you need someone who can score the basketball. But at what price? And you pointed out the window's closing. You do also have to prepare for the future. And that pretty much is the enigma that the Warriors are in a nutshell. So, yeah. Podziemski's one I would like to keep, strongly like to keep, but then that's where some hard decisions are going to need to be made. If there is a true superstar on the table, what are the Warriors willing to give up? And that's why we don't make the big bucks. That's why there are people in the organization that are supposed to be studying and making those right decisions, because I do think it's a tough one. For example, though, to me, if you look at an older player like a Jimmy Butler, who's recently been linked to the Warriors and rumors just swirled around, I don't like the idea of giving up the entire young core for an older star. So I also think that's something that has to be taken into consideration when they are looking at possible trade targets and things of that nature. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, which is a huge part of what LinkedIn Jobs is. My husband actually decided to switch careers. Was in broadcast, decided to go into sales, and he used LinkedIn Jobs. It helped him find the right employer. I think it's a great tool. And LinkedIn in general is just an awesome way to connect professionals and to connect people who might be right for your job. They may not always be conventional candidates. For example, my husband had skills that translated to sales, but he wasn't in sales, and it helped connect him to the right employer. So I think it's just awesome in terms of being able to make those connections. It isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you find that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and that much quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, so to wrap up this Brandon Pajemski Young Piece conversation, sounds like you have something you want to add just in terms of the point that I've been making, that there are going to be hard decisions that have to be made. Like, what kind of superstar has to be brought in order for you to be willing to have conversations about a Jonathan Kuminga or Brandon Pajemski? To me, age is a big factor of who you're looking to bring in as that secondary scorer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you would want to trend towards a younger-ish superstar. But the question, I think, for the front office and the ownership is, what's the value of one more championship? As hard as that's going to be in the West, getting that with Steph, and then a complete teardown and going into, I don't want to say an Oklahoma City rebuild, but a lot of losing seasons to get back. Like, what is that? Or do you think that you can be a playoff team or someone that's pushing and have Steph and try to win, and then you're set up better for the long-term future? I think that's the question they're weighing out. What's the value of one more championship or one really good run, and having Steph with some superheroes and probably Draymond in there as well, versus what they have with Pajemski, Kuminga, Moody. I'll include Moody in there. I'm a big fan of Moody, but that's a whole other question. And some of those types of guys with Steph, and then a guy, maybe not a superstar, but some better role players for the Warriors. I think that's the question they're weighing out right now.
Dude, Chris, I could talk about this with you all day, because then my follow-up question to that, and we could be here, like I said, literally all day, is like, do the Warriors have one more championship run in them? Like, is that realistic? Can enough changes be made? Steph at the age he's at, Draymond at the age he's at, if they do bring back Clay, which is still majorly in question, like, you're looking at your 3 leaders in minutes being 35 plus, and you just don't see that. The Warriors were the 3rd oldest team in the NBA this last year, and not just by the numbers. And, it's not just like vets on vet minimums. It's your leaders. It's the players that are playing the most minutes. I have a hard time with that, because I just think the NBA is getting younger. It's getting more athletic. If you're still looking at those 3 carrying a majority of the load, like, how do you get there?
Yeah. And I think for the positive side of things, the Warriors are in. It's hard for me, because you watch them every night and you're like, gosh, they're right there. But they didn't win those games. And those were games that they did win in the past, and they blew teams out. And they were obviously a super team back with Durant in those days. But they were so close. And I just would have loved to have seen if the Warriors had gotten a little bit higher, had themselves even at 7 or 8 to give themselves a chance to get out. Because you saw teams like, even though Minnesota, OKC, they just weren't ready this time around. They were so close. And so I think it's where the Warriors maybe could have taken advantage of a team in the early rounds. You never know. I mean, those teams are so young and athletic, and the Warriors don't have a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They don't have any of those guys. Anthony Edwards, right? I mean, like, that is the few. Anthony Edwards, what a player he's becoming. So with Steph, I don't count him out. I think that's just the best thing to do. I personally, selfishly would like to see one more run. But it's going to be difficult, and there's going to be some changes that we both don't see right now. And I don't know what those are, and I'm waiting. I cannot wait to find out what they are.
Oh man, this offseason is gonna be one for the ages. It's gonna be entertaining to see what moves the Warriors make, and I would love to know like what's going on behind the scenes right now. Want to touch really quickly on a topic that I mentioned. We're not gonna have time really to break it down, but just Draymond Green. If you go over to the Draymond Green show and you find it on Twitter, he made all kinds of comments in his recent episode talking about Kavon Looney. One of the topics that was addressed was what happened with Jordan Poole. He mentioned that he did regret what went down and that he wasn't able to celebrate with Jordan Poole after he signed that max extension, got his bag. And Draymond Green did sound like he was remorseful about it. There was some criticism because, hey, he's still making it about him because he talked a lot about how, well, I was so sad I couldn't go celebrate. I was this, I was that. And then a lot of people said, hey, like, let's move on from this. Why is he still talking about it? So there are a number of different sides of the issue on that. But you can go on over, check out the Draymond Green show. I couldn't play a clip from it because there were expletives being dropped throughout it. So I'll let you, at your own caution, go on and look that up really quickly. Chris, appreciate you comment on. What's like one of your favorite experiences or one of the coolest things you've gotten to do while covering the Warriors? Like you get to do unbelievable one-on-one interviews. You're there courtside. You followed the team through championships. You grew up in Fresno. So you've been following the Warriors for even longer than working at ABC 7. Just what's a moment or memory that stands out to you?
And the first one is driving in the parade. Like there's nothing, I mean, I get goosebumps even thinking about that moment. Like I got to drive in the Warriors parade. I drove around Brandon Schneider, team president, and there's nothing like that. I saw where, you get those memories up on your Google Photos or whatever, and you're seeing some of the stuff. I'm like, wow, I was driving around. And the funny thing about that day is towards the end of the parade route, which was a beautiful day, it was warm, and we were in these older cars. I can't remember. It was like from the 50s or whatever. We finally got to the finish line by City Hall. And you're helping park it or at least get it out of the way. The car died right there. Like it stalled out and it was done. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful it didn't stall out on like Market Street, which was the main parade route in San Francisco.
Right.
For some people that don't know San Francisco, the long route, which we basically went down from the water side to about 10 blocks into City Hall. I couldn't believe that, but luckily that didn't happen on my watch. The chopper didn't had a traffic jam because there was some cars that broke down and you'd have to kind of slowly go around them. And then that year as well, like Jordan Poole took my mic off of a double-decker bus. I was trying to get an interview and he shouted me out, and it was really fun. So that was actually
I remember that. That was so cool.
It was really cool, but I actually didn't hear what he said because it was so loud. And then I saw it back later, and it was it was a really cool clip. So just developing a rapport with the guys. The Warriors are great from the top down, and their PR staff, as you well know, Raymond Ritter leads that. And so I've had a great time getting to work with the Warriors and build friendships off the court with, people on their staff and some of them just saying hi to the players. And you'd like to see them make a couple more runs here because this window there and has been so special seeing Steph and the guys grow up. And now we're at the back end of it. What kind of throws can they provide the Warriors, and what kind of unseen players are coming along? I think this is why we watch, Kyle, and this is why we cover it, because we just don't know what's going to happen. Sports are great like that.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you that actually covering that parade, I didn't get to drive anyone, so I can only imagine how cool that was. But just being there on the parade route, I was covering it live for Kron. All the local channels had shows that were going on throughout it. And I did have the credential to where I could be like inside the ropes. You know what I mean? So cool. I'll never forget Klay Thompson I was at the start of the parade route, like got off the bus right away and was running around like up and down, the fans like waving, like, oh, those are just like the memories that, like you said, give you goosebumps. But you've done unbelievable work, and it's been really fun to watch you and continue to follow your journalism career. Really quickly, where can people watch? First of all, you get beat up by Trace Jackson Davis in video games. Where can they follow you, and what's the best way to follow your content in ABC7?
Yeah, so ABC7news.com is our website. We're on ABC7 here locally in San Francisco. There's the ABC7 app, ABC7 Bay Area. And then my Twitter handle, you see it right there, is my name, C. Alvarez ABC7. I need to get better at my Instagram game. I haven't really developed in TikTok. I'm like behind the time on some of that stuff. But, I think the thing for me is I'm always trying to just produce the best content, at least for the day and on TV. So I spend time working on features and doing other things. So if I were to develop my game in the off season, there's some social media work that needs to be done on my end, but I enjoy it. And Kylan, you're an absolute star. I miss seeing you on the beat and annoying you at practice and seeing you in a million different places. But I'm so proud of what you've done in your career. You're just a superstar, and I miss Charlie as well. So Maybe we'll see you sometime.
It's just turning into a love fest. You know
yeah,
what?
Sorry.
Keep it coming, Chris.
Cut it.
All right. Well, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, and with the local experts at Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Chris, thanks again for hanging with us here on this episode. You're the best. After we're done rolling, you continue to let the compliments roll in. But for now, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.